Okay.
Okay.
You just told me. And so am I on my Facebook Live. So
Okay.
we coming from all places here. Got to get us on Instagram so we catch those young folks.
Yes, indeed.
Is that right, Asia?
It's pretty right.
So either that or TikTok or Snapchat, right?
I haven't gone into TikTok though, but yeah, yeah.
I'm just learning Snapchat.
Oh yeah. I
Too
keep it simple. Instagram.
Too many venues, that's for sure.
Sometimes Twitter. That's it.
Yeah, I've got Twitter and Instagram mastered, so
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'm getting there slowly but surely.
Not mastered with it yet, so I'm still working on the Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Twitter is quite interesting. You know, you get all these different views from people.
Yes, it is.
You want to reach through there and slap a few people, but you know, it's good that, you know, that doesn't happen.
Yes, James.
Well, don't touch that down, good friends. We've got the Brother Slim Overton. Oh man, James over there, he's gonna get me for that one. But guess what? Oh man, it's all right. We got the Queen, Miss Leah, on this morning, and we have Thomas Chapman on. All right, but before we get on this morning, I just want to say a word of prayer for them on today. Father, we just thank you, God, for what you have done already in our lives. Thank you for our last night sleep and slumber, how you've allowed us to rest and to get up on today, feeling fresh, revived, feeling renewed. And we just thank you on today. You've given us the activities of our limbs, and we ask God that you will continue to bless us throughout this day. God, I pray on today that these people who will come through the airways, that they will give us the information that we need to become better citizens, to become better parents, to become a better community, and most of all, to become a better world just for you. We give you thanks and we give you praise. We know that it's already done, the things that we've asked in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, and we say a pleasant good morning to you.
Okay, good morning, Bishop, and thank you so much. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And welcome to 7 Cities Forums of Hampton Roads presents Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And we have my co-host, Leah Drake Stick, Thomas the Colonel Chapman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Of course, yes, and this morning we have a special guest with us, Miss Asia Moore.
Aja
Moore. I'm sorry.
Yes, Aja.
Thank you. You know, I'm the king of name, but anyway, I should know that one. But Aja Moore, and she'll be with us momentarily. But before we get started, and Leah will introduce her, I want to give a little community news. On the 7th of August, Community Day, the Lions Club will be conducting a free eye screening for children up to 18 years old. And this will be conducted at the Wesley Community Center from 11 to 2 p.m. That's August the 7th. That's on a Saturday at the Wesley Community Center, 1701 Elm Street. And I think they do that annually in conjunction with the Wesley Center. So bring your children out there to get this free eye. It's so important for us to be aware of eye health as well as any other health concerns we have. So this is an opportunity to get your children's eyes checked out or screened. And they will also have school supplies and combos. So it'll be a festive day. So bring your children out there. And this is for all children all over the city of Portsmouth. So, and also tomorrow night, National Night Out, we have the Wilson Ward Civic League and the Craddock Civic League will combine to have their National Night Out Day on, well, that's tomorrow, Tuesday, from 5:30 to 8:30. And this is historic. It's kind of new for these two civic leagues to come together on National Night Out. And they have a historic connection about why these two communities were formed. So I think this is sort of great that we are coming together, you know, as two civic leagues to celebrate National Night Out. So it's going to be at the Olympic Sport Club, and that's on Portsmouth Boulevard, 3235 Portsmouth Boulevard. So come on out and join the sheriff department, the police department, the fire department, and city officials. And there will be horses. Well, a couple of horses out there if you want to ride the horses, if you're brave enough to get on the horses and ride the horses. But there'll be food, entertainment, and of course, Portsmouth Coffee Talk will be represented out there. We will have a table out there, and I'll be going around talking to different people. So, and if you don't have warrants, well, anyway, I'll be out there talking to people. So join us tomorrow at 5:30 to 8:30 for the National Night Out at the Olympic Sports Club, Wilson Ward Civic League, and the Craddock Civic League combining to celebrate that day. So we look forward to seeing you there. All right, Leah, will you introduce our
Yes.
guest?
Colonel Chapman has something to say first.
Yes, got a little bit of housekeeping here. Just going to announce first that the views that are expressed by the host and our guests are not of the responsibility of the radio station. I just had to get that housekeeping out first. Go ahead,
Very
Leah.
good. Thank you, Colonel.
That's very important. And by the
Coffee
way,
Talk team, I'm just so excited that we have as our guest this morning, Miss Aja Moore. Aja from the city of Portsmouth, Virginia, who left us and went to Virginia Commonwealth University. And since that time, she is creating her own path. And for a young lady who's just been out of college for 2 or 3 years, Audra? 3 years, wow. 3 years, and she has had such a path that she has created for herself. And so we're just so excited to have her on board. And really, and if we get more young people to become engaged and involved as she has been, what a better world this would be. So Aja, I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. I'm just so excited to have you here so that you can share with us those things that you are doing in your life, and maybe you can help some other young people who may want to follow in your footsteps, or maybe they want to create their own path. And with the guidance that you can give them for the choices that you've made, I'm sure it would make a difference in their lives as well. So I want to say welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk.
Thank
and
you.
so Aja, let's start with, you left us, you went to Nansemond River High School. We'll forgive you for that. You should have been at Norcom, but anyway, Nansemond River. So you left Nansemond River and you went to Virginia Commonwealth University. Now, while you were at Virginia Commonwealth University, what activities did you participate in while a student there?
Once I got to VCU, I knew I had an interest somewhat in politics, but I wasn't really quite there yet. So I knew I wanted to get into writing and kind of the media side of things. So I joined a few writing clubs. I wrote for our school paper, the Commonwealth Times, and I was a part of an all-women's organization called Her Campus, where you could kind of freelance whatever pieces you would want. And a lot of mine were driven towards politics, as I realized. And that was kind of before I took the leap to really start doing some true politically based activities.
Okay, and while you were at VCU, Senator Lucas kind of snapped you up and took you under her wing. So tell us about your job and your role with Senator Lucas' office while you were a student at VCU.
So I ran into Senator Lucas, I'm sure it was just a Portsmouth event when I was home a random weekend, and we were kind of just talking about what I wanted to do and where I saw myself. And at that point, I was at a kind of crossroads with if I wanted to kind of pursue politics full time, or if I still wanted to do the medical science path that I was thinking I wanted to stay on. And she told me to reach out to her LA at the time, which was Vernon Tillage, our current school board member. So I reached out to him and I told him that I spoke with Senator Lucas about interning and what do I need to do. And I didn't really have a lot of context. We kind of just had a conversation and I wasn't sure really what the Virginia General Assembly even was at that time. And he was like, well, we start session in a few months, because at this point it was getting into be late winter. Session begins in January. He was like, so you've reached out to me just in time. We start session in about a month or two. So how about you just start interning and I'll give you a few days that work for your class schedule. So that was 2018. And I interned with her throughout that session, a little bit throughout that summer, and then the following session, which was my senior year, 2019. So I was with her for a good 2 years of college, which was incredible. I learned a whole lot. And I also got to see the transition of her being in the minority, which was the Democrats didn't have any majority at that time. We did have the governorship, but not in the House and the Senate. So I was able to work with her in that regard. And then once I graduated, got a full-time position with her as her legislative assistant when Vernon got a new position elsewhere. And then they had the Democratic majority then. So I was able to see a lot in just a short time.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you went on and then once Louise got you started in that field, working up there at the General Assembly, and then Governor Northern's office caught wind of what you were doing. But before that, I want you to talk to us about the Sorensen Emerging Leaders Program. What exactly is that program and how did you become involved in the program?
So Sorensen Emerging Leaders Program is one of the 4 programs under the Sorensen umbrella, and that is a program by the University of Virginia. So there's the level that I was on is usually young professionals, fresh graduates, a little bit of an age range, but mostly around my age, a little older, a little younger in that regard. And it really is a 3-month intensive political leadership course. And we're able to have a variety of speakers from all over the Commonwealth. The class makeup is from all over the Commonwealth, and it's a bipartisan program. So we're able to work with both sides of the aisle. And it truly is just a kind of fast course to kind of a lot of different areas in politics you can either get into. That includes local. So we had some local speakers, we had some state level speakers, lobbyists, people in the General Assembly, people that have nothing to do with the General Assembly. It was a variety of jobs that we were able to really learn about. And we have a policy project throughout that time where we're assigned in a group, and it kind of gives you the experience of that build up to General Assembly session and what it's like to really, really cultivate and create a policy to be a potential bill in the General Assembly. So with my group of, I believe it was 7 of us, we were able to create a project that we could then take to a member if we were wanted to. And they also kind of assign us with a member that we can talk through things with and let us know what would need to be tweaked and what wouldn't get by. So it kind of gives us that other perspective that usually as workers under these members, we don't know what it's like to really be a member. So it gave us a little insight with that. So in plain terms, that was what the Sorensen program was, but it was an incredible experience that I would do over and over again.
So for a young person who may have an interest in becoming involved in that program, what do they have to do? How do they go about becoming involved?
So there is a lot of information on the University of Virginia's website, and you do not have to currently be in politics. That is the good thing. There was, of course, a lot of us were, because we hear about it through jobs and just through other coworkers that you kind of learn have done Sorensen in some capacity. But that's kind of the true point of it too, is to kind of give you that base level knowledge to not make you feel like you have to know a whole lot before getting into politics. So it does give you just a little quick rundown of what it would be like to get into it. And it does give you those opportunities to kind of find your niche in terms of what can I do in this field outside of the typical things you hear about. So there is a lot of information on their website, and their Facebook page is also very active.
So do they have to be current? Can they be in college at this time to go there, or do they have to be a college graduate before they can become a part of the program?
I think it used to be college. You could used to be in college, but with the timeline that they kind of have changed through COVID, now it kind of overlaps with school as well. Okay. So I would recommend kind of just staying, if you're interested, looking at the dates that they end up choosing, because I know they might kind of go back and forth. When I did it, it was during the fall, which would have conflicted with my school studies.
Mhm.
I think it's possible to do both, but just depending on the type of student you are, because we do only meet on weekends, but the projects last throughout those 3 months. So
Okay, very good.
Hey, Miss Moore, and I'm gonna call you that because you're gonna have to get used to being called that now, the way you are. But what I want to do is bring you back to Port. You're in Richmond now. I want to bring you back to Portsmouth just for a minute and talk about the organizations that you were involved in the city of Portsmouth, like the MLK Leadership Steering Committee and Democratic Party. And those both of those groups have been around for a long time, and it was important that we had young people like yourself get involved
Mhm.
and help continue what those organizations were doing. How important was that experience to you as far as taking it, starting there and then taking it to a state level? Because I know at one point you were doing both at the same time, but you were still getting that grassroots, you know,
Yeah.
education, you know,
Mhm.
from your city, from your home city.
Yeah, I think it was really important. And I think that's also why, even once I moved, I still wanted to stay involved. You really realize once coming to state, and I haven't been to a federal level yet, but for those of my colleagues that have, we all kind of mutually agree that where we're from and those home bases and those grassroots are really the most important. It's kind of where you form those really pivotal relationships, and you're able to learn a lot. And it's also important for candidates to know that too. And I think that's what I like about Portsmouth so much, is that our candidates are so involved and our elected leaders are so involved. And it really does kind of give you that like the home base to move forward and always have something to come back to. And I was able to learn a lot just as a general member in the Democratic Committee, but then once becoming secretary, you really do, in any part of the executive board, you really do work a lot with the state as a whole. So we would work a lot with the Democratic Party of the whole Commonwealth. And that's a lot of knowledge as well. There would be a lot of trainings we would be a part of and still are a part of, and they have those pretty regularly, about every other month. And just a lot of different email threads with a lot of events. And that's kind of the stuff we share with the general committees, because there's always things happening. There's always a way to kind of get to know candidates on those state levels and even higher sometimes. And I think that's what I really liked about Portsmouth's committee. And I think for that matter, any local committee that anyone is a part of, it's probably the most important to be a part of.
And tell, I think by working on the local level like you have, a lot of people don't realize how much work is done year round as far as the General Assembly. All they see is when they go into session,
Mhm.
and the news is covering them and everything. But it's a lot of work that goes on year round preparing for those sessions, the short and the long sessions. So explain how important it is for people locally to know, and how they can be in contact with the legislators year round, because they're working year round, putting together packages
Oh,
and working on laws, that they're going to act on during the session.
yeah. Senator Lucas would work on her priorities year round. And it's heavier during session because you're around the different lobbyists, you're around the different community leaders that come up to the General Assembly and lobby you once that was in person, which hopefully, well, this special session will be in person, but I'm hoping that our next regular session will also be in person, because that's really where you work a lot harder. But she would have calls throughout the weeks leading up to session year round in terms of kind of what her priorities would be, and if they lined up with certain groups that she worked closely with, and if they lined up with the governor's priorities, because her being in leadership, she always had to kind of keep that in mind, that she might have to carry a bill on behalf of our governor, and just a lot of different things that you have to talk about because our session is so short. And in other states, they might have half a year or longer to be in session at one time. And we only have under 3 months at any given time. So it's really important to take the rest of the year to really bunker down all those different ideas, because that's when you really have all that time. So she worked year round, whether that was also campaigning and attending events and having to fundraise, because you can't fundraise during sessions. And it's just a constant calendar buildup. And with someone like her who has a large district, she would also have to travel that entire district and make sure that she's able to talk to every single constituent she has to take into account what they would want her to do. And that's not easy, especially when your district varies so much. And somehow she would do it all. And I look at all these other members, and if they really care that much, they also do it all. So it is a full-time job, even though they only get those session credits, and you really can and should reach out to them anytime because they always want to know what they can do.
Yeah, they're in special session right now trying to figure out how to spend this money. So,
Yes,
Colonel?
indeed.
Yes, Ms. Moore, thanks for coming on the show this morning. It's a breath of fresh air to see young folks getting out there and doing their thing. But I got a couple questions for you. And I've always been a policy man. And I look at the upcoming electoral battles that are coming up, and I listen to what I call the Republican feel-good message, but I look behind the onion, peel back the onion, I look at the evil policies that they normally put out. So you've been you've seen the transition from being in the minority and in the majority. And can you tell us a little bit about the differences of being in the majority versus the minority? And then the second question would be, what's the difference in the policies that get through when you're in the majority and being in the minority? Do you have a voice?
It's a big difference. I was able to see a lot of, and this is speaking on my time with Senator Lucas still, when I was with her the first time, a lot of the bills she brought up when I was with her for those 2 years, some of course got passed. And I think that's the other thing. Virginia does have a decent bipartisanship when you do kind of look at the bigger picture. So there are some things kind of, just very rule-based initiatives that always kind of get passed, but you will see a difference in kind of those big liberal things that they like to kind of quote unquote make just democratic issues that seem to get passed. Like in this year, we had the death penalty get abolished, that passed, and legalization of cannabis that got passed. And those are two things that I don't think would have gotten passed if it wasn't a Democratic majority in all parties, because we have the House, Senate, and the governorship right now. And even with that, it was still not a landslide of that being passed. So there is those key things, and those are just two examples of things that I know probably would not have happened not in Democratic leadership. And the energy is also different. And I think just the confidence that the Democratic members do have when they have the majority is a lot different. They're kind of more willing to just take more risk, whether they're ready to get passed or not. And that's always a fun thing to see, because they still do try to keep the Republicans in the loop, because I mean, without everyone, it's not going to get passed regardless. And it's not a guarantee that they'll always have the majority. So it's always important to kind of set up pieces of legislation that might need work if they leave, or if the majority then shifts again, and just things of that nature. So you do see them work a lot harder, even though I think it makes you think that they don't have to work as hard when they have the majority, but it honestly is a whole lot more work for them. They're working a lot more around the clock. They're doing a lot more events because it's all of them together, and they really are focusing in on what's truly important to pass right now, and what do we need to think about that could get passed later, but how do we set this up correctly? So I think that's just the different shift I saw. I saw a lot of just differences in how much they worked and how differently they had to work once getting into the majority, and just thinking a lot smarter and getting on the same page, because though they're all Democrats, they still have different agendas and different constituents. So not all their bills will always line up either. So it was an interesting shift to see, but something that's really cool to see as well.
And Aja, your shift from Senator Lucas to Governor Northern, you were on his policy.
Yes, I was on his.
Okay, so what role, what were you doing in his office as far as policy is concerned, and how was that shift from Louise Lucas to the governor's office?
It was very, very cool. I would do it over and over again for other governors to come. But it was great. I was able to be on his policy team, which is a small team of us. The policy team is looked at to be kind of like their own little secretariat's office. Our job is to work directly with the governor, for whatever his priorities are for upcoming sessions and throughout the year. And our jobs are to implement that with our members and constituents and whoever else we need to talk to make that happen. And that's, like I mentioned before, governor's bills. So the governor himself obviously does not come to the legislature and talk about his own bills, but he will tell us months and months in advance, this is what I want to happen during this upcoming session. We need to find the right members to carry these bills that line up with these views, that have worked on these views before, because he's aware that some of the things he wants to happen, he's not the first one to ask for. And that's a lot of work as well. We have to really, really stay very tight knit with our legislators. And we always do. Usually, Governor Northam has had some bipartisan initiatives where he's asked Republicans to carry certain bills. Of course, majority Democrats carry his bills, but there are still a few things that he knows can get across the finish line on the other side. And usually those aren't too much with priority aligned, but they are kind of with just different tweaks that he would want to happen throughout our Commonwealth. And it was just a great shift for me, because as a legislative assistant, you're able to be a part of a lot of different things. And I think I just wanted to circle in on one aspect of this job. And policy was something I always felt like I was interested in. And this just gave me a little bit of the flip side of what I would kind of work for with Senator Lucas. And she knew that. And that's why when this job came about, she was like, you have to go. It's going to give you knowledge that I can't give you because it's a different whole job. So it was a wonderful transition, and it gave me a good opportunity to work really closely with a small group of people, and as well as the governor. And that's just something that it will always just excite me, even though I'm moving on to another thing, but it was a great position to have.
And that leads us into where you start today with Reed Smith LLC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before you go there, I want to go back just one more time, because I want people to know the journey that she has taken, especially the young people. Especially, you said the last 2 years you worked while you were in college, and being in college is a challenge within itself. And to be able to be in college, I guess it was good that you were there in Richmond, and so right there at the Capitol. But being in college, how did you navigate that, being in college, trying to finish those last 2 years and working as a legislative assistant? And we want the young people to know sometimes it takes sacrifice to get to where you want to be. Even though you're in college, and there's time to have a good time, but there's also a time to be disciplined and stay focused. So how did you navigate those last 2 years, working at the state capitol?
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I think it made me a lot more organized and structured to kind of have a lot to do, because I was still involved with the school organizations that I was a part of. And then getting this position took a lot of my time, but it was something that I really enjoyed too. And I think that's also really important, that internships and working in college, I know it can be a lot when you still have to finish up your workload as well. But I think when you're doing something you really want to do for your future, it pushes you a lot more. And I think you figure that out quickly with internships, in my opinion. And I knew as soon as I started this one, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I think that gave me that push to know, like, after graduation, I could work here potentially, but let me still do my real work, because I know, like, I do have to graduate. I do have to have a decent GPA if I want to move forward with school or anything like that. But it just gave me a different perspective about just a bigger picture. And it did give me still time to have fun and do things with my friends, and give me a lot of time to study hard for the last classes I was finishing up. But also with this program, I was able to kind of have flexibility with some classes, since it was a part of my major, to get credits for the internship. So that in a way also increased the workload there for how well I should do and for different things I had to do. Also kind of gave me a little less stress to not have to stack my last 2 years with a lot of classes, because I was able to use the General Assembly as credits. And I find that with most college and universities, you can just ask. And I think you should just be more open with things that you're doing outside of the university, because usually there's a lot of flexibility there to get school credits or anything that kind of just helps you lighten that class load. But it was great for me. I think I was the type that kind of needed a lot more to do to keep myself very structured. So having more on my plate almost works better for someone like me. It lets me really stay focused and not get too relaxed, and doesn't let me procrastinate as much as I still sometimes do. But it was better in that way for me.
Yes, indeed. More on Moore's plate. Leah, before you get
I
into what you
know.
get into, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, time
let
to
me
switch
just say,
over.
we'll be approaching the 7 o'clock hour.
Right.
So we'll be leaving the radio, but we'll be continuing on Facebook Live. So we want to thank in advance all those listeners on WGPL 1350 AM on your radio dial, and please come back and join us next Monday morning. So Leah, you can go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at moving from policy assistant to Governor Northern to government relations analyst for Reed Smith LLC in Richmond. And Reed Smith is a pretty large law firm there in the Richmond area. And I know when I worked at the General Assembly, most of the lobbyists that I met were lawyers. So I am deeply impressed that you, as a young person coming out of the governor's office, will become a lobbyist for Reed Smith LLC. I mean, that's just super exciting, Aja. I mean, I just can't, tell you how much I am just in awe of what you're doing right now. So tell us what you plan to do with Reed Smith.
So I start today. So I actually am not 100% sure. I know not being an attorney and also not being a registered lobbyist yet, I will go in kind of with more of what seems like an organizational kind of role right now. So I won't bring in my own clients quite yet. And I don't know what clients I will really be working for and with yet. Because they didn't really want to tell me too much while with the governor's office, just due to some conflicts of interest that could be arising. I don't know. So it will be a slow start. They seem like a very tight-knit firm. It's a small team over there as well. It will be 7 of us now. And it's going to be a good learning experience. They seem like they want to really groom me in the correct way and not just throw me in with all these expectations. And they've already said, yes, you can have your clients. Yes, you will be able to lobby, like, yes, yes, yes. But like, give yourself time to really like learn the ropes, understand like our role in these things and what we usually do with the clients that they already have and just things like that. So it seems like I'll have a lot of time to get acquainted to what their day-to-day looks like. And I know my initial things or my initial projects that I was able to kind of ask for would be having to do a special session. So I'll probably do a lot of, just bill tracking, and there really won't be a lot of bills this year other than our budget bill, but just kind of in a normal time bill tracking, but in this case, budget tracking and just kind of generally watching session. Most firms and most lobbyists won't have a lot to do with this session. It's just kind of a shorter one and it won't be a lot for me, which I think also would be great because I'll see kind of how session usually works for them and what they usually would do on a busy time. And it's a good transition before our regular session later this year to kind of see how they would generally prep. So I'll have more answers soon, but I honestly don't know everything I will be doing yet outside of General Assembly things and working with those people. So it'll still be up my alley of what I really like to do.
Aja, one thing that you said that really touched my heart was that although you've had the experience in the governor's office, although you've had the experience in Louise's office, the thing that you said was take the time to learn. Although you have the knowledge, and that's so often when young people want to jump in and immediately make things happen, but take the time to learn how they go about doing what it is that they do. And I think that's most important. So use that time wisely and learn everything that you can learn while you're there, and it will take you wherever you want to go, and I'm just so I'm excited. I mean, just like I gave birth to you. I'm excited, child. And I want to see how far you're going to take all of this. And as I've told you in the past, when you're ready to run for office, I will be your campaign manager, okay? Now, getting back to campaigns, Aja, you did serve as campaign manager for Vernon Tillage when he ran for the school board. Now, how did that come about?
That was great. So it was me, it was kind of like a co-manager, Brandon Randleman, he did a lot for the campaign as well. But so Brandon has done a lot of campaigns for state and local candidates. And for me, I've never really ran a campaign. I've just worked on different ones for a few local candidates. And of course, helping with Senator Lucas's campaign when I was with her at the time, and just having that general knowledge. So it was great for us to kind of team up in this effort with someone that is very campaign minded. And for someone like me who has never run their own, but is very aware of a lot of different campaign mentalities. And I've known Vernon, obviously, since I was an intern. He's who kind of, I give him a lot of credit too for where I am too. Because if it wasn't for him and Senator Lucas, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So when he asked me to help on his campaign, of course I wanted to. And it was really, really fun. It was just a good time working for a good candidate that knows what they want to do and are in it for the right reasons, as well as someone who is very homegrown. And it was just kind of great to kind of connect with Portsmouth on that level too. And it was just a different way of what I usually would do with Portsmouth organizations. But that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, definitely. And I can also see by doing that alone, if I were to do that alone, like that's a lot of hours to put in no matter what level you're running on. Like Brandon was always thinking of things to do around the clock, and we were always just communicating about just shirts and just reaching out to people and events and just all the things that you always have to think about, but just seems like your mind is going at super speed during campaign time. So that was a great experience. And of course, it's always great when you win too. So when he won,
Always great when you win.
Colonel, before you get in there and ask the question, I know you have a question. I wanted to go back to the lobbyist thing for a minute. And Leah had mentioned that most of the lobbyists are lawyers, and a lot of them are former legislators as well, and men. And it's over the years now, you see a lot more women coming into those positions.
Yeah.
But still have a long way to go. And I think you coming in there, you'll probably eventually be a lobbyist. How important do you feel that it is to have more women involved in those positions of being lobbyists?
It's so important. I mean, of course, not to knock men, but I do think it's important to just have that diversity and just different mentalities. And there's so many women that I've met in my short time in just Virginia politics that have done so much. And I think just to kind of have that knowledge on my own time when I am able to talk to certain people and what they've done and continue to do, having women in these roles is just very important because we are so knowledgeable and there's so many. And it's like you said, it is becoming more common to have women in these roles, but it still is kind of like a different sigh of relief when you're like, oh, like I'm not going to be the only woman on my team. And I've been kind of lucky in that regard too, to work for a woman. And then in the governor's office, it was majority women in the policy team. And now going on this lobbyist team, it'll be majority women again. And those are just kind of a 3-step things that I feel like I've not been thrown into, because I think a lot of women have paved this way to make themselves very like, put me here because this is where I deserve to be. So I'm really thankful to kind of just the women that have come before me that have made this a normative now, because I don't think I would have had the same experience if I would have gotten into politics just 5 years ago. So I think it's important to have women there because there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of us in positions that we deserve to be in a little bit higher. And I think that'll continue to happen as I'm seeing it, just because we are getting more confident to speak up. And like I said, we've had a lot of great leaders kind of pave that way for us, where it would be shameful to them if we didn't ask to be where we should be. And I'm excited because, yeah, with the Reed Smith team, there will now be 4 women and 2 men. So.
Oh, wow. Very
That's
good.
perfect. That is perfect. But you know, they got a perfect segue into as we talk about the word lobbyist. So I'd like to, before we get off the radio station, also to lobby our public that is a listening audience, is that if you'd like to hear more about these kind of topics, you can send donations to Portsmouth Coffee Talk at P.O. Box 7664, Portsmouth, Virginia 23707, or send us a shout out at Portsmouth Coffee Talk at yahoo.com and let us know how you're doing. So I got that housekeeping thing out of the way. And then so as we also go down the road for and using the word lobbyist and diversity, those are two things that you just, our guest just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So one, my first question is, how do we get young folks to get off the couch and stop watching TV or walking the streets, to get out here and exercise their right to vote and not give away their only power that we have as a people? One question. Two, I love how you've gotten out there and looked at the policy of how you're making sausage to make policies come in fruition. So, and then what leads to the other piece is a lobbyist, when we use the word diversity, and when I use the word diversity, it's just not female and male and the two connotation and gender, but also a person of color. And so when I look at the word diversity and I look at the Republican Party, when they talk about diversity, they use that as a negative connotation. So could you expound on those two parts? And I guess the third one is, do you see law school in your future? So you got three questions there.
Okay. Law
Oh,
school.
yeah.
That one's the easy one. Law school, I do now.
Yes.
And I did not at one point, and not for any reason. I have an older sister and we're very, very close. And she's an attorney in DC. And I've seen her go through law school, and kind of I was younger then because we're 8 years apart. So that was another thing where now that our age gap is closing, I'm able to kind of really ask her more questions too. Because it's always nice, of course, I'm surrounded by a world of attorneys in my work career, but it's nice to kind of have that family experience too. So I say that to say I strayed away from law school for a while, and I think it's because I was putting myself in a box where I was like, oh, like this is Ashley's thing and she's so great at it, so like let me just, do something else. And now, of course, as most things go, things come full circle, and I'm seeing myself to be a lot more interested, and I've weighed different other grad school options, and this is coming out to be the one that I think I'm going to focus in on. And I think this new role, working with nothing but attorneys, will also really push me there. But I do think it's important in my job, and it's important out of what I want out of a school program, that I think I would get out of law school beyond anything else. So yes to that. And young people getting out to vote, that's something that I still am trying to figure out too. I do nothing but bother all of my friends at all times just to make sure they're aware of just the state and, of course, their own local races as well. I have friends that live in Northern Virginia, and of course some that still live in Portsmouth and Suffolk. And I'm constantly bothering them about what's coming up. And most of them, even being some of my closest friends, are still very unaware with just the severity of a lot of these races. And of course, these are friends of mine, so we can get into real conversations and they can ask real questions because they're comfortable. But it is one of those things I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we make it more appealing? Because these are all friends of mine that are intelligent and have career paths of their own. So it's easy for them to have accessibility to these things, and they still just choose not to. Until I'm like, hey guys, like vote this and vote for this and vote for this person since you don't know anyone else, and telling them who to vote for. So, I mean, that's something that I think I'm still, as a young person myself, trying to figure out, like, how do I appeal to people my age that aren't into politics? And sometimes it's easy, but I think that's, again, it's because they're friends of mine usually that I have easy access to. But I don't know. And I find that it's getting a little more, dare I say, like trendy to vote now. I think there has been a lot of like social media initiatives and like younger celebrities that make it something cool to do. And especially with the last presidential election, there was a lot of social media campaigns that kind of enticed a lot of younger people to vote. I had friends that admitted it was their first time voting, or that they've only voted for presidents before, which would have been just the one before. So I think it's hit or miss, but I do think it's on a better path than worse. I have seen a little bit of improvement. I think Trump was a wake-up call for a lot of people.
Exactly.
And that's made them at least be very into presidential. It's just now giving them the knowledge of those off-year elections also. but I feel like people are getting more inclined to do so. So I think it's getting better. And then what was the middle question?
Talk about the diversity piece
Oh.
and explain, you just talk about diversity by being male, female, but being a Black female or a person of color, and the difference between a Democratic definition of diversity versus a Republican definition of diversity of male only, white male, old male, white male only club.
Yeah, that's still something that is very much, yeah, I mean, that's still something that it's not common to have a lot of Black women in high positions still. And I mean, of course, we do have our legislative members. We have women of color, like we have Senator Lucas, Senator Locke. We have a lot of African-American women in the House of Delegates, not a lot, but a handful. And so that's something that I think, I don't know what that mentality truly is. And I do think sometimes it's not even Black women. I think if you're just a woman, you're automatically kind of looked at differently, and then throw any minority on that, like you're kind of looked at as like this kind of weird optic, I feel. But I have kind of seen a growing diversity in some regards in terms of like legislative assistants. There's kind of a growing group of young Black politicos. And I think kind of just phasing out that good boys club mentality is kind of happening just by us pushing ourselves in the door. And then even on my new role, though I will be around other women, I am the only Black woman and the only African-American on this team. So it's happening slowly, but I think it's also just kind of not really listening to the narratives. It's just doing at this point, whether that's in any party. And I look at too, like the lieutenant governor's race, we have 2 women of color. They're on the Republican and Democratic side. So however way that race goes, it will be a woman of color in office. So that's why I don't know if the mentality even seems true to just be on Republican side anymore. It's just reality we live in politics that I think is going to slowly change.
Well, you know what? Before you go there, I got one thing to say is that yes, in the lieutenant governor's race, just because the other party, and I'm talking the Republican Party, has somebody Black, doesn't mean that they have the same mindset of a Black person. And that is the Republican way of putting a Black face with a basically an evil part. It has nothing to do with being Black. It's just putting the vote, just to dilute the vote.
We're getting interference from the radio station.
Still on the radio, I think.
We need to cut them off.
Yeah.
Okay. Got them out. They were shutting down. So yes, just because someone is minority or Black doesn't mean they are going to do something for you or that has the same policy. So we got to make that thing difference. That is a big difference. And we see that popping up in the Republican Party across this nation. And we as Democrats, or at least myself, we fall for that trap all the time. Yes.
And yeah, that's kind of what I know we have to change topics, but I think that's just kind of my overarching point too, because even on the Democratic side, though our policies kind of align a little more often, I still think it's just it's just not always a guarantee too that just because you're a Democratic white man that you necessarily want to see a woman of color grow either. Exactly. So I think that's why it's kind of like, for us, it's difficult no matter how you look at it, you just kind of find where we can do more work on one side versus another, but your face is still your face. And sometimes they look at you and don't even care what your policies may be. They just see what they see. So I know for me, it'll be an adjustment and it'll be something different. And I've already kind of spoken to people I can trust on this matter, but I'm like, my experience in this world will be different than those of my colleagues, because though we're women together, they just have a different mentality when they look at a white woman compared to me as a Black woman. So it's just a slow navigation on both sides and all parties. And I've just kind of learned who to talk to and who to kind of get that advice from in terms of just pushing forward and not always just putting that first, because if you do, it just puts you on like a never ending spiral of how you're looked at and what to do to fix it. And it's just, yeah.
Yes.
Well, the good thing for you, Aja, is in going into Reed Smith, is that you have formed a relationship with those members of the General Assembly. And I'm sure you formed relationships with those on both sides of the aisle. So that will work to your advantage once you go back into working whatever level that they have for you to go into the General Assembly. And I know you're going to succeed regardless. Whether you know them or not, you're still going to be successful. So I know that you're going to do all that you can do in order to prove to them that you're worthy of the position that they have offered to you. So I just say congratulations to you. And I just want to say at this time that Crystal in Italy said to me to tell you congratulations. She's watching the show at this time. So she says congratulations as well.
Thanks, Crystal.
So
Worldwide.
wait, Slim.
Worldwide. I just wanted to say, and everybody knows, most people know that watch, that you are one of the daughters of our Portsmouth Sheriff, Michael Moore, our beloved Sheriff, Michael Moore. And we didn't bring it up too much because we wanted people to see your path.
Exactly.
Your path first before, they formulate any kind of opinions. Because you are the daughter of the sheriff, and in your path, like Leah said, you made your own path. You've been around Sheriff Moore. Before he was sheriff, he's always been in law enforcement. And just want to get your take, as a young woman, because you'll be up there about the crime rate that we're having, especially in the city of Portsmouth. And sometimes you'll be around maybe pushing or advocating for some policies that could help. It could be one of the things that could help on a local level as far as dealing with the crime. So give us a take on what you've seen over the years as far as the crime rate in the city of Portsmouth and throughout the state and the country.
Yeah, I think, and we have worked on a lot of initiatives on the state level that have unfortunately failed for years and years. And even this past session, we had some great pieces of legislation that could just make even just a minor difference. And like you said, it takes more than just laws to pass, but I think that's a step forward. And I've seen even in the majority, a lot of that fail. And I think it's just because though it would be so helpful, a lot of people are just still stuck on kind of how that looks politically, and making sure it's the perfect wording and there's no controversy behind it. But and I think with that work, I've been able to kind of just track different numbers and just see the different rises, not only in Portsmouth, throughout the Commonwealth, and with Portsmouth specifically, a huge jump in that just within the last couple of years. And it's disheartening. I think it's hard to read and look at, and then also work for a member from Portsmouth that wants to make those differences legislative wise and where she can. And then to have other areas of the state that maybe don't see it as much and don't see it the same way, and just don't really take into account how serious it is depending on where you are from. And that's not to say gun violence doesn't exist everywhere, because it does. But I think a lot of other areas are kind of privy to not seeing it as often and not living in such a small area where it's everywhere. And I think that's kind of the hit or miss. And that's the sad part, I think, of where session can lie sometimes, speaking legislatively. And I think just personal experience wise, you bring that into where you work, and it's just such a variance throughout the state that you're not always on the same page. And I think that's why there's been such a push federally, because that just encompasses everyone equally. But I mean, it is hard to see, and it's something that I want to change. And I know I'm not in Portsmouth at the moment, but I mean, that's always going to be home. And I think that's why it's also important to have community leaders in those positions that really care about this issue. And I know the sheriff's department is just one entity and they can't fix everything. And I think that's also another thing that people need to realize. that being in law enforcement doesn't mean you just fix everything like that. I mean, my dad has been working on gun violence and gun initiatives my whole life in just different capacities, and it just doesn't work that way. And I think for certain community leaders too, to criticize so heavily on what the sheriff's department or police department aren't doing, like, yes, it's important for them to really step up and be that forefront force in that, but it takes more than just them. They can't do it on their own. And I think that's just what I want people to realize about all things, like General Assembly, sheriff's department, police department, any political leader. You cannot do it by yourself. And I think that's just a stigma that needs to change. And I'm Facebook rants and looking at Facebook with different people that look at our gun rates and our gun violence and blame it on one person. It's just, it's just incredible to me that I still see that, because I'm just like, for you guys to put this on one person is just despicable to me. So I think it's just a group effort on all parts. And I think the sheriff's department has done their duty. The police department, they're going to try, I hope, and I don't know anything about kind of the police department's initiatives personally, but I mean, it would be in my right mind to say that they care about this as well. And then on a legislative side, it's trying to happen, but things just don't happen as fast as people want them to.
Yeah, and you answered that just like, I'm glad you answered it that way, because I want some of the community leaders or some of these activists that speak out like that to realize or to be educated on what it takes in order to do some things before they start accusing legislators of not doing anything, especially on the state level. It takes, you got two sides of the aisle that, and you mentioned that a lot of legislation was trying to get through, but it was stopped by the other side of the aisle. So, just be educated before you go out here, like you said, and blaming one person and pointing at people and things like that. And we try to say that a lot here at Portsmouth Coffee Talk, so people will be more cooperative in working together as far as trying to solve this thing. So thank you for your answer. That was very informative.
It was.
You know what, Slim, that's a very important comment that you made. First is that as we get into the new election season that is upcoming, and you see that there are some politicians out there on the other side that are already talking about this law and order, lock them up and feed the industrial complex for jail them folks. And so we have to be careful on that and look at, this is just not a local problem, just not in Portsmouth, but this is a national problem about guns and gun violence. And we're looking at statistics, and we try to sensationalize and act here and there and this and that. And so we have to really look.
He's frozen.
People and people are looking at. And so that goes back to Mrs. Moore sausage making part of that, and the societal ills that we are now living through as we come out of this pandemic. And so we also have to be careful on, we don't want to go back to the Trump era of a police state that the new Trumps want to do. So I just had to add that as a comment.
What the main thing is, just as one of the listeners, Miss Arminta Richardson Harrison just wrote, we all have a responsibility, and
Yes.
it really starts in the home. And so much so that the community has to take on some responsibility, because
Yes.
when these guys' pictures are shown, someone knows who they are.
Yes.
And there are individuals out in the community who know who these guys are who are committing these crimes. So they have to take some ownership with that as well. You just can't rely, as Aja says, on the sheriff's department or the police department, or political figures. The community has to take a role in this. We all have a responsibility to end the gun violence. So if you know someone who are doing these things, I mean, these young guys are posting things on Facebook with the guns and the money and what they're doing. And so someone needs to talk.
Yeah.
Someone needs to talk. That's all there is to it. The community just has to come together, stop pointing fingers, stop saying what someone else needs to be doing. If you have a solution, bring the solution to the table.
Yeah.
You bring that solution to the table and let us start working as a community to end the gun violence here in the city of Portsmouth.
Well, I do think we're particularly lucky. I mean, it's not the same for every area, but I think we're lucky to have two departments that really do make it easy to communicate with.
Exactly.
And I think as a community to have that and to have sheriffs and police departments really in on this issue, take advantage of that and speak to them, because it's not always as easy to talk. And I mean, that's a known thing in Black America and in America in general, but I think for Portsmouth, like, we should be lucky that we do have high standard officers on both sides that we can talk to and
Exactly.
really kind of make this a collective initiative and not point so many fingers everywhere. So I think we should take advantage of that.
I agree with you.
Yes, but you know what? There's also a connectivity piece to it, and we always talk about just not the guns. The guns are tied to our drug problems, and they're all connected, and we don't talk about them in a holistic kind of thing. So we all know people that are out there slinging that stuff. And I always told the young folks is you never see you see on Facebook the guns and they're showing off all the money, but there are no retired drug dealers out there. And the only people that make the money in the drug deals are the undertakers, because they're waiting on you. So keep doing what you want to do. But us as a community need to say something. So that's my commentary on that piece.
And you're frozen, but your voice is
Yes.
powerful,
No.
more powerful than your visual.
Yes.
But you are frozen. Uh-oh, now you're gone.
He left us.
Trying to
Okay.
restart.
He was
Okay.
frozen. He left us.
Well, we're kind of winding down now, so I just wanted to ask you if you had to speak to some young and some people entering college today, or even in high school, because I think it's important to start thinking in high school about what you want to do and making sure, because that record's going to follow you as well. So you can't play around in high school either, as far as the books are concerned. But I always tell them, enjoy yourself, enjoy those times of your life, but have priorities. But what would you be telling young incoming college freshmen how to prepare themselves, or a lot of them don't make up their mind what they want to do until later on in their college career, but what would you suggest to them how to prepare themselves for the life after college?
I'd say always ask questions. I think I've found that to be kind of the thing that's helped me the most. I've never been afraid to just ask for different advice, different questions about any type of field, whether that was politics or anything I thought of before. I was never afraid to ask for an internship anywhere. Prior to my political road, I thought I wanted to be a dentist. And I asked if I could just intern. So, I mean, I think just asking questions, always kind of having someone in your corner is just so important. And I think that just goes beyond just the academic life of college. Because that's something that I think academically in high school and college, you'll figure out, like, you'll know what works for you. You'll know what you need to do all your work, and you'll know what you need to do to excel. But in terms of life after work and jobs after work, I don't think I would have been nearly as successful if I didn't have, whether that was family to ask, but just people to ask. And I know not everyone is privy to the same circles. And I think that's just why it's important to just always ask. If I did not ask what it was like to work in politics to Senator Lucas, I would not have gotten this opportunity. And I think that's why it's just been important for me to continue to keep people like her and like you guys and just like family, just to kind of just always have them. Because I think as young people, you think we have to do it all on our own, and it looks better when we figure it out on our own. But sometimes some things you don't always have to figure out on your own. And it helps when you just have that ability to have someone to just ask. And that could be someone your own age or someone higher to look up to as like a mentor. But I just think to have some figure and consistency in your life is important for kind of navigating what it's like beyond just schoolwork.
Yeah, I did see where you did work in Holly's office, dental office for a while. I mean, intern or whatever you did there.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with trying out different experiences. And like you said, you know what you want to do really hits you, because you'll feel it here,
Yes.
So anyway, but we want to thank you so much for coming on, getting up early, and congratulations and Godspeed to you and starting today in your new position. We know you're going to do well and represent us here in Portsmouth well, and we're going to make you an official Greyhound as well. So.
Definitely so. But Aja, I want to thank you so very much. We've had a very long journey together, and I've watched you grow into the fine young lady that you are today. And the blessing is that although others helped to open the door for you, you stepped through that door and you did what was necessary in order to be successful in what you're attempting to do. So I wish you Godspeed. I wish you much success. And once you get started there with Reed Smith LLC, we want to have you back so that you can talk to us more about what you're doing, because you could truly encourage some other young person to move in this direction or in another direction just by listening to you. And I'm just so proud of you, so very proud of you. And just thank you so very much for agreeing to be on Portsmouth Coffee Talk on this morning.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, and again, and we want to thank all the viewers and listeners on Facebook Live and the ones that were on early on the radio. And please remember, tomorrow, National Night Out, Wilson Ward Civic League and Craddock combining to celebrate the National Night Out, and will be at the Olympian Sports Club location on Portsmouth Boulevard. And just come out and enjoy and put your riding boots on, because we have horses out there, and we'll have paramedics out there for those who fall off. But anyway, it'll be a fun time to socialize and get together with people in your community. And also, it's important for us to come out and interact with the police and the sheriff department and the fire department. And you can talk to them, and they're accessible, and let them know what's going on in your community and what you feel you need from them. That's what they need. They need to hear from the community residents about what they need to do and what's going on and what they need to focus on. So come out and join us tomorrow night from 5:30 to 8:30 as we have a big community affair. And focusing on having a good time, but also focusing on crime and having the people available for you to talk to. We appreciate it. And don't forget the Community Day on August 7th at the Wesley Community Service Center for free eye screening for children up to the age of 18. So.
And James, and you're mentioning Wesley, also stop by there and see what wonderful things Miss Renita Banks and her staff are doing there at Wesley Center. They have a wonderful clothes closet. They also have a wonderful food area. It looks like you're in a little grocery store in there now.
Yeah.
So they're doing some great things out at Wesley Community Center. So go out there and give them your support, getting some items, and also you want to drop off a donation. I know they need donations as well in order to keep things going at the Wesley Center. But once again, I just say, Aja, thank you so very much. We didn't get to talk about your VCU Graduate Council, so maybe we have to bring you back to talk about that. But I just thank you so very much. And once again, I'm saying just so very proud of you and all of your accomplishments, and just look forward to all the great things that are going to take place in your life in the future.
Okay, thank you. Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice,
our community, and I'll say for the Colonel, our future.
Thanks again. We appreciate it. God bless you. Have a great day.
And one more thing, remember to check this interview out on YouTube. If you missed any portion of it, it will be on YouTube. I want you to go to YouTube, go to Portsmouth Coffee Talk, and subscribe for our channel, please. So Aja, thank you so very much. And everybody's saying, awesome job, Aja Moore, awesome job. So we thank you, Aja, so very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye, sweetie. And have a blessed day.
You too.
Enjoy your first day.
I will.
Okay.